Picture this. A ranger at an elephant sanctuary is doing his morning rounds when the matriarch of the herd steps out of the tree line, alone, which never happens. She's supposed to be half a mile back with the rest of the group. She walks straight up to him, stops, and just stands there. He's confused for a second, and then he hears it, a thin, high distress call coming from the brush behind her. He follows her back in, and there's a calf, maybe 3 weeks old, one leg caught in a wire snare, exhausted from struggling. The matriarch backs off a few feet and waits. Doesn't charge, doesn't posture, just watches him work the whole time, like she's supervising a procedure she personally requested. That's not a one-off, that's a pattern. And once you start looking for it, you find it everywhere. A fox showing up at a rescue center with a limping kit trailing behind her. A pod of dolphins herding an entangled calf toward a fishing boat, and then just holding position. A stray cat depositing a newborn kitten on the same porch for the 3rd time in 2 months. Wildly different species, wildly different environments, doing the exact same strange thing, handing their most vulnerable offspring directly to us, which honestly should not be happening. Humans are, by almost any measure, the most dangerous animal on the planet. We hunt. We build roads through habitats. We've spent 10,000 years being the single biggest threat most wild species will ever encounter. An animal that treats us as a safe option is making a bet that goes against basically every survival instinct it has. So why does it keep happening? Across species that share almost nothing biologically, in situations with the highest possible stakes. Turns out it's not one explanation. It's a handful of different things stacking on top of each other, and some of them are a lot more calculating than they first appear. Let's start somewhere familiar, because if you've ever fed a stray cat, you may have already lived this without clocking what was going on. Feral cat colonies have a long track record of funneling kittens, sick ones, orphaned ones, perfectly healthy ones, toward one specific person in the neighborhood. Not whoever's closest, not whoever's loudest. The one who left food out during a cold snap, or once pulled a burr out of somebody's paw and never got forgiven for it. Cats are quietly excellent record keepers. They clock who moves slow, who doesn't chase, who shows up with food on a schedule, and over weeks or months, that person gets reclassified in the cat's head from unknown threat to something closer to a fellow colony member. And colony members get access to the kittens. It's not sentiment. It's a background check that took 3 months to clear. Now here's where the same logic starts showing up in animals that have never been anywhere near domesticated. Wolves and coyotes living on the edges of low-conflict human areas, places with feeding stations, minimal hunting pressure, generations of humans who didn't shoot on sight, sometimes show the same collapsed fear response you'd expect from a family dog, including, occasionally, moving pups toward a familiar person during a den disturbance. It's not that they've become tame. It's that an individual animal, or sometimes a whole family line of them, has run the same cost-benefit calculation the cat colony ran, just over a much longer timeline, and landed on the same answer. Birds take this somewhere even stranger, because birds remember faces. Crows in particular are notorious for it. They can recognize a specific human for years, hold what looks an awful lot like a grudge against someone who wronged them, and extend something that looks a lot like loyalty towards someone who helped a chick back into a nest once. There are documented cases of crows steering injured or abandoned chicks toward a specific, previously helpful person. And the wildest part is that this reputation doesn't always die with the bird that formed it. Younger crows raised around a parent who trusts a certain human sometimes inherit that trust before ever interacting with the person themselves. The assessment gets passed down as family knowledge, the same way a kid just absorbs which neighbor is the nice one without being told directly. Then there's the ocean, where this behavior gets almost eerie in how deliberate it looks. Dolphins and whales already run cooperative childcare inside their own pods, shared babysitting, coordinated defense, the works. So the social wiring for This individual needs help. That individual over there can provide it. Already exists before a human boat ever enters the picture. What seems to happen is that wiring occasionally gets extended across the species line, especially towards something that's been slow, loud, and non-threatening for generations. There are accounts of a mother whale positioning an injured calf directly alongside a boat and simply holding there, waiting, like she's handed off a task to a specialist and is now watching to make sure it gets done. And then there's the layer that isn't romantic at all, and it's worth being honest about it instead of only telling the warm version. Sometimes an animal isn't choosing a human out of accumulated trust. It's choosing the nearest, large, slow-moving, non-predator-shaped thing in a moment of pure crisis. A flooding den, a predator closing in, an injury a parent physically can't treat. In that moment, the options narrow fast, and humans, for all our faults, don't smell or move like something that eats babies. Scent plays a real role here too. A lot of mammals catalog specific human scent profiles, the same way they'd catalog a known safe member of their own group. And once a person's smell gets filed under safe, it can apparently stick in an animal's memory for years, off just a handful of encounters. So some of this isn't deep trust at all. It's the absence of a worse option. But even that version still requires an animal's brain to run a real risk assessment about us and come out the other side deciding we're the safer bet, which, given our overall track record with the natural world, is still saying something. Which brings us back to the elephants, because they might be the clearest version of all of this. Elephant memory is famous for a reason, and elephant herds have been documented approaching specific humans, usually rangers, researchers, sanctuary staff, with an injured or orphaned calf, standing back and waiting, sometimes for hours, for help that never would have come from within the herd itself. What makes it land differently than the other examples is the timescale. Elephants have been recorded recognizing a former caretaker after a decade apart, reacting in a way that looks a lot like genuine recognition rather than habit. If an elephant can hold a positive read on one specific human for 10 plus years, it stops being surprising that the same elephant, faced with a hurt calf, would eventually decide that person is the safe option. So at this point, a pattern is pretty obvious. Almost every one of these examples involves an animal with real memory, real social complexity, and some history, even an indirect one, of low conflict contact with a specific human. This was never about animals trusting humanity as a species. Our record is far too mixed to earn that kind of blanket trust, and it shows. Animals with heavy histories of persecution, hunted populations, high conflict areas, essentially never display this behavior. It's not us in general, it's you specifically. The one who moved slowly, the one who left food out, the one who didn't scream and bolt the last time something wild and unexpected showed up. Every quiet, careful interaction becomes one more entry in a private ledger a wild animal keeps on a specific person. And when the stakes get as high as they get, a baby's life, no better option in sight, that ledger gets cashed in. There's one more piece worth sitting with, and it's the part that turns the lens back on us. Every time this happens, it changes the human on the receiving end too. Rangers and sanctuary workers who've lived through it tend to describe it as one of the most meaningful moments of their careers. Proof that years of slow, unglamorous trust building actually meant something to the animal on the other side. Conservation researchers have started tracking these moments seriously, not as viral clips, but as a kind of informal report card on a region. Places where wild animals still approach humans in crisis tend to be places with lower hunting pressure and a longer history of coexistence instead of conflict. In other words, this isn't just a story about animals. It's a slow motion audit of how we've been behaving, one quiet interaction at a time. So the next time you see a stray cat parade a kitten onto somebody's porch, or a pod of dolphins hold position beside a boat with an injured calf, or a matriarch step out of the tree line alone and just wait. Don't file it away as a cute animal video. File it away as it's evidence that on a planet full of species that have every reason to be afraid of us, a few of them have quietly decided, one careful interaction at a time, that we were worth the risk.